Hi, thank you for coming at night at this session. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ernesto. I'm VP for Developer Technologies. And let's talk about DevOps, but in a kind of different way. So let's start. First, start with a checklist of terms that we used to read when we're reading that's kind of DevOps job advertisements, or when you read the kind of articles about how great are doing the companies that are trying to implement DevOps. Do you recognize these terms? Tools, approach, blue-green, canary, containers. They're great, okay? But I like to ask you something. Are you sure that those terms are what DevOps is about? Perhaps we are missing something. I asked you remember the definitions about DevOps, and most of them talk about teams, people, cooperation, synergy. So it appears that nowadays we are just focusing in technology, but not about the people that are trying to implement that kind of innovations. So with that in mind, I tried you ask yourself what could be the blockers for a properly DevOps implementation. And that's what I'm going to share with you my reflections about this, okay? So let's start. But I told you we're talking about people, but I started with technical. No? Sounds strange, but not at all. A few months ago, I asked a friend why they were still deploying an application overnight, taking 8 hours. And he told me, our system is not ready to support DevOps. But are we sure? Are you sure that you are really analyzed your current workflow and detected if there is room for improvement? If you have a chance to reduce human intervention, adding automation and gaining the time on the process, even if the system is old. So what I asked you is think that perhaps it's not a technical issue, but an attitude one. So what I ask you is take the responsibility to improve your current process even if the technology is old. Analyze, make baby steps in order to detect how you can improve your deployment process, okay? But if you are doing that, don't believe that you've reached the end of the road, because in the end, you could want to get rid of the legacy, because legacy is anti-change. So in the end, you could get doomed into the real obsolescence, the business one, okay? I love coming at street, by the way. So what we're seeing in this strip is something that happens in organizations. There is a system, there are rules, and there is a ticketing system. And some actors in the companies use that in order to have less work to do, and also to speed down the work of the other teams. So what we can do, because change is possible, okay? But it's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. So what we can do? We need to try to generate a trusty environment. We need to make your good work talks for you in order you can gain the respect and cooperation for your team and another teams. Also, we need to make sure to recognize properly the contributions of the people that work with you. So don't be afraid to say, hey, that operations guy really helped me to complete my deployment. Because by giving recognition, we're emphasizing that we are part of a change of value that delivers delivers the objective of the organization, okay? But also, sometimes we forget that every team is measured in a different way, and we believe that operation teams is evaluated in the same way as a development team, and it's not true. So we need to realize that, and in that way we can understand how and why the other teams are behaving in that way. So by doing that, we can achieve real cooperation in the DevOps field. So when we are walking down in the streets, we are just thinking about ourselves, don't even care about other persons, right? But the sad part is that kind of behavior happens in the DevOps world. Because you could need help from another teams, from another communities, in order to know how to improve your deployment process. But sometimes you can get these kind of answers. So we need to understand that these kind of answers came when we believe that our current knowledge or our current approach it applies for most of the contexts. And that's not true. So yes, perhaps you can have hundreds of servers and your approach is okay for you. But what happens if the person that is asking you for help has a simple environment? Your approach doesn't apply. So what you need to do? Try to understand the other people's context. Try to be empathetic. Interact with them in order to give a proper answer according to another context. So, with that in mind, I ask you, check your ego at the door, please. Okay, if we are going to do DevOps, we are supposed to speed that process, provide new ways of work. But what happens if in the team we get this? We always done in that way. Not so DevOps, right? A few time ago, I had to interview a guy for a position in our company. And the guy had been working in a very important company in my country. He has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, so I decided to talk about his work day. And by doing that, I realized that he was proud of being a blocker of the deployment of new applications that the organization really wants to introduce. So I couldn't believe that I was hearing. So we need to understand that this kind of behavior came when we really tend to trust in the old ways to do, when we think that the old rules still apply in a digital transformation world or in a cloud world. And that is not true. So we need to be aware of this kind of behavior or mentality in our teams because it could be a really blocker. Also, look at this phrase. I got this phrase when I was about to jump in a new customer. But it sounds reasonable, right? Adapt. But, my friends, it's a trap. Because if we adapt, in the end, we can just provide a cosmetic improvement, a light improvement, or even worse, talking about DevOps, we can deliver a complete automated pipeline with containers and so on, but the development team and operation teams are still so isolated and so uncomparative as before. So we need to be aware of that. We need to adapt and try to improve because that behavior could be okay for building, but not okay for change. And we need to get new results, right? Okay. Can you see the girl at the drums? The funny part of this is that she wasn't the drummer. She was the singer. Also, she played the hurdy-gurdy. But that night I was in that concert, she moved up and started to play with the cymbals, and the results were amazing. So that led me to something that I learned a few months ago, is that we, in our teams, we need to list all the involved parties, because you never know when the less expected member of your team could introduce something really helpful or really critical for your teams. So you need to provide a space for everyone make their contributions, okay? Also, we need to realize that it doesn't matter how much do we need to know about technology or even business, because context always change. It could be a new technology that we need to implement. It could be a new business requirement. So we need to be ready to learn every time. So that's part of what real leadership in DevOps is about. Okay, psychological term, right? And in this room, we are plenty of technology people, but this is something that really happens a lot in DevOps, because it's related to this phrase: if we have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And the hammer came from our past. And our choice of tools, our choice of approach came from our past experience, even from our career line. So think about this. DevOps is a new field, okay? And most of the one that we're working on DevOps, we came from a developer experience or from an operation experience, right? But something funny happens, because if you used to be a developer as me, you could be eager to use platform as a service. Why? Because you don't want to deal with all the internal details. You just want to deploy your application. But on the other side, if you used to be an operations guy, you prefer the full control that a complete machine provides you. So you could be eager to want infrastructure as a service, right? So the idea is everyone has a past. But the key point is we cannot let our past condition us. Our past could provide us a starting point, okay? But not the final solution. We need to try to understand the complete problem and then determine what is the proper solution for the problem. And we need to realize that sometimes our trusty and love approach could be not okay for the current problem. So that's the kind of attitude we have to do. Try to think beyond our starting solution, beyond what our past try to focus on. So we talk mostly about people, but it's okay to think how we can deal with technology in a DevOps context. So first of all, we need to remember technology is an enabler, but not a goal in itself. Technology helps us to solve problems. Technology is a way to achieve results, but it's never a solution by itself. And sometimes we forget this and try to think technology as the goal by itself. No, it's not, and it doesn't work in that way. Also, when we have a problem, we need to understand the problem properly and try to keep simple, but not simpler. Also, try to avoid over-engineering, because sometimes we do over-engineering just for the sake of proof how much do we know about technology, and perhaps it's not required in that way. So we need to be aware of what are the rules, of what are the laws that we need to follow, but we try to have a balance, to try to things keep simple. And regarding technology, we need to be humble. Why? Because we we have to face that technology changes every day. So we will be ready to learn every day. We need to be curious to know what is happening. And perhaps the new exciting technology could be what we require for this project or not. But always investigate. That is critical in this field of DevOps. Okay, my friends, we reached the point and we try to focus on what we are about to take from this Ignite session. Just think about this. DevOps goes beyond automation. It's based on people. People that make decisions. People that choose tools. People that try to improve the way we work. People that use technology but not applying technology as a goal. Okay? So, being that it's something focused on people, we need to remember that could be blockers. I showed you a few blockers that could happen in this process, okay? And I ask you to try to remember them and be able to detect them in early stage in your works, in your companies, and try to solve it in early stage, okay? But we need to realize that sometimes we can require professional help. If the problem is too deep or too big, perhaps it's out of our scope. Perhaps we can require help from a specialist, perhaps psychologists, sociologists, because they're trained to deal with this kind of human aspects. So we need to recognize when a special help could be needed and try it, okay? So we're running out of time. I let you my Twitter if you like a conversation. I'll be around here. Thank you for coming to this Ignite session. I'm letting a few stickers from my local community in Peru. And don't forget to fill the survey. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you.